Is Swami Vivekananda's message for a stable global order. Now, normally, every year when we end this session of lectures, just at the beginning of summer recess, we conclude the lecture series with a talk on Swamiji. So, this time we have chosen a topic which in a way is an attempt to emphasize some of the great teachings of Vivekananda or Vedanta in general and their relevance to our own times, the current geopolitical, cultural, global order. In a way, it may look a bit irrelevant or strange, but as you're going to find out, it is very, very important. Now, talking about this global order, it has a political background behind it, the whole expression. If you look at the history of the 20th century, you find after the Second World War, till the collapse of Soviet Union in 1980s, there was this bipolar order. The political divide on both sides of the Iron Curtain, the Western powers, including Japan and other countries, on the one hand, and the Eastern Bloc, Warsaw Pact. This may be strange to many of our younger members of the audience who have not lived through the Cold War. But that was the time when the world was confronting the problem or maybe the blessing of bipolar global order, where security or global security was assured by the threat of mutual destruction. It was a period of nightmare. And then came the collapse of Soviet Union, and that was the beginning of what they call a unipolar political global order dominated by the United States and the Western Bloc. And now we are going through another political paradigm which may eventually lead to what was once called a kind of multipolar global order, which actually, historically speaking, is not a new concept. It goes back to the first important treaty, which is an important subject for those who study international relations and diplomacy. That is Westphalia Treaty, the Treaty of Westphalia, 1646. That was the beginning of a multipolar global order, where the domination of a single country or one or two countries was not the ideal, rather it was divided among so many different political groups and alliances. In a way, it actually assured peace to some extent, only in a very relative sense, peace at least in some parts of Europe. The Spain and France on the one hand, England and Sweden on the other hand, there was peace between these two blocs with the signing of the Treaty of Westphalia in 1646. So the very concept of states mediating international crisis, and then the concept of using diplomacy as a tool instead of war for bringing peace to the world, and the very concept of peace through a multipolar global order. This was a great contribution. This very concept was a contribution of the Treaty of Westphalia. Historically very important. It was the end of the Spanish War. Now, going beyond all that, what is its relevance today? So, till the Treaty of Westphalia, the very concept of international peace or global order was based upon political and military equilibrium or stability or harmony or peace brought out by political or military power or commerce. And later on, commerce became an important criterion, element, and the imperial ambitions, which also played an important role from 19th century onwards, during the time of Queen Victoria. Actually, strictly speaking, from 17th century onwards, the beginning of the discovery of different sea routes and discovery of different colonial countries where raw materials were easily available, which were exploited by the colonial powers of Europe, predominantly by England and France, and eventually by the Dutch and France and all these countries. So this is the background we have to keep in mind when we talk about Vivekananda's concept. So, and again coming closer to our own times, you can find three major civilizational forces working: the Mediterranean, four civilizational forces: the Mediterranean, the Western, the Indic, and what you call the Scenic. I mean, the civilizational forces which had their origin in the Mediterranean region, in the Middle East, and then the Western colonial powers, Western imperial powers, and the emergence of China, and eventually in our own times, as you frequently perceive, the emergence of India. Now, this is a new political paradigm we are confronting. Now, one important fact that you can find when you listen to Vivekananda's voice, he passed away in the year 1902, long before, at least 13 or 14 or 15 years before the beginning of the First World War. So actually the beginning of all these new paradigms that dominate today's concept of multipolarity is called. I mean, the global orders based on economic, military, political, and commercial considerations. All this began actually with the First World War. And Vivekananda spoke for the last time. He spoke before 1902. He passed away in the year 1902, July 4th. But he, in a way, he said a few things which may have a very important message to our own times. He says, peace and stability and harmony can be achieved only through the mechanism of harmonization, integration, or different civilizational forces. Peace and stability cannot be achieved through military and political and commercial means. This is an important thing that he said. In today's world, many of our younger generation may disagree with me because they know they are living in what you call a digital world, where the digital technologies, now emphasized by the artificial intelligence, dominate modern times. The very concept of power and dominance in modern times are dictated by the digital technologies. Today's wars are fought by the power of digital technology. They decide which side wins or which side loses. The old military strategies founded by Sun Tzu or Kaudilya in India, or by Alexander the Great, Genghis Khan, these were great military generals in early history, the scourges of humanity, people like Genghis Khan, or Napoleon Bonaparte, or Duke of Wellington. All those military generals and their teachings and their concepts have practically disappeared in modern times, because you decide the fate of a nation by pressing a button or by manipulating information, the magic of information, and their evil or good influence, positive or negative influence on human minds. So, Swami Vivekananda says, an ideal society or a stable political and social order can be created by harmonizing four important civilizational cultural elements. And they are taken from 4 social structures of ancient India. We should never misunderstand when I mention Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra concepts in ancient Indian society. Because you have to remember, these are not words used to indicate groups of people. These are words used to indicate human temperaments, culture, spiritual and cultural evolution. If you are a highly evolved person who works for a stable political order, then you are a Brahmana in modern concept. Swamiji says that. If you work for a stable political order, and if you use military strategy as a means, you are a Kshatriya. If you are trying to dominate the world and create a kind of security and global either unipolar or multipolar order, through economic means, you are a Vaishya. And if all these are removed, if you are trying to do this by hard work, at the physical level, you are called a Shudra. These are 4 terms used to indicate 4 levels of cultural evolution of all human beings, even all animals. In the Vedas, there are many statements which tell you that in the Vedic literature, in the Puranic literature of India, you find elephants, monkeys, different animals endowed with Sattva-guna. Hanuman, you have seen the picture of Hanuman in some of our temples in the Bay Area. Hanuman is actually a symbol of a supreme member from the animal kingdom who could reach the level of the divine, who realized divinity everywhere and within himself. So you can find, again, in some of the ancient Vedic hymns, Prithvi Suktam, there are Vriksha Suktam, there are many Bhumi Suktam, there are many hymns which I don't want to quote right now because it may take us beyond the present context, where trees and mountains and valleys are also endowed with Sattva-guna. Again, don't remember they are gods and goddesses or human beings. Rather, you can keep this entire universe in a state of Sattva-guna. It is this kind of Sattva-guna that is indicated by Swamiji when he used the word Brahmana. In fact, there is an interesting statement in Complete Works. Very difficult to understand, could be very controversial in modern times, especially in India. Brahmanization is our goal. A very powerful statement. You know what it means? It means bringing every human being, all the maybe close to 8 billion human beings inhabiting this earth, should become Brahmins. What does it mean? All of them should be living under a political, cultural, spiritual order dominated by spiritual values. Swamiji said, then only an ideal society can be created in this world. In fact, he quotes many events, many episodes from world history. Some of them we are going to refer to right now. Where Swamiji says, for example, he refers to the Roman cohorts, the Greek phalanx, and then he refers to different military formations, and he says all of them have only drenched the world in blood again and again. It's all because they thought that political power, military power constitute the only way for creating a stable political order. I will come to that later. So in today's world, what you find is an attempt to create a global political order by security, economic, or commercial means. So there could be security order, economic order, and Swami Vivekananda says that's not enough. There should be a spiritual order. Suppose we can combine in the dominating political paradigm of a country or a nation these 4 forces: philosophy, spirituality, contemplation, meditation, a transcendental vision, an idea that we need wealth, but wealth is not enough. We need power, but power is not enough. We need all other wonderful blessings of science and technology, but that's not enough. Now, this wisdom, on the one hand, plus a proper utilization of the resources of nature, of earth, of the human resources, through proper means based on equality and egalitarian values. If we can combine this together, that will be an ideal political order, Swamiji says. So, a proper utilization of all the blessings of modern technology, all the blessings of modern Western values, all the blessings of science, innovation, all this. At the same time, not forgetting the fundamental truth that a human being can never be happy, cannot be fully contented just by becoming rich, by becoming powerful, by becoming modern. So Vivekananda's concept of harmony is something very interesting. It talks about the need for harmonization of science and technology on the one hand, and religion. And when he talks about religion, he's not talking about a particular book or the finality of a particular messenger or belief in some kind of a deity, either in Hindu or any of the Abrahamic religious traditions. When he talks about religion, it's very interesting. Religion is spirituality. And spirituality means looking upon the whole humanity as one spiritual family. So finally it boils down to some kind of a cutthroat spiritual egalitarianism. This is something very interesting. So when Vivekananda talks about the need to synthesize, to harmonize science and technology, which means all the blessings of science and technology, the power and also the blessings of science and technology, and spiritual values, which actually constitute the real meaning of religion. This is what he's talking about. Then he talks about the need to synthesize and harmonize the cultural values, the civilizational values of both East and West. And Swamiji, in one context, says, he praises the ancient Greco-Roman tradition, the energy, and at least in Athens, their concept of democracy, which again was a kind of lopsided kind of democracy, because there were still slaves who were not part of the Greek city-states like Athens or Sparta. Still, the democratic values that were preserved in some ways in ancient Greece, and the dynamism of Romans, and again the adventurous spirit of the early European colonizers. Vivekananda even praises them. There is not much to praise in their character, but still Swamiji was broad enough to praise the dynamism, the energy, the explorative zeal which took them to different continents, which in a way led to developments like, think of Australia or New Zealand or African continent or even America itself is an example. So without this dynamism and energy, these new civilizations, nations and continents would not be explored. They would have remained still in some kind of a civilizational darkness. So Swamiji has a word of praise for them also. Of course, he comes heavily on their in their exploitation. Vivekananda refers to Cortes, Hernando Cortes and Pizarro and all that. So Francis Drake and so what Raleigh. I'm not going to those details. If you have got questions to ask, you are most welcome to ask during the interaction. So Swamiji, while referring to some of these negative aspects, he also praises their dynamism and energy. Then he talks about the need to harmonize secular and spiritual. I think this was altogether radical. If you look at the history of religious philosophy, it's mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, in our ancient text, no doubt. There are so many statements. Swamiji spoke only what was stated in our ancient scriptures, as he himself acknowledged. But the point is, it is Vivekananda who first brought to this world this new concept that a stable society and nation can be established only if you can remove the dividing line, the cultural, civilizational divide between the secular and spiritual. It may question the very foundations of many of the Abrahamic belief systems. But, of course, those foundations began to shake with the emergence of Karl Marx in 19th century, and also with the emergence of modern humanists, modern science, especially with Darwin and others. It's a different subject. The very concept of creation theory was practically questioned from the publication of Origin of Species onwards by Darwin. So the point is, Swamiji says that a person should be able to live in this world as he is worshipping in a temple or a church. This is difficult, very high, tall order, very high idea. But the point is, that's the only way to bring stability. You can put the word stability in capital letter with underline. Permanent, everlasting stability will be possible only by harmonization. And harmony is the magic. In fact, one most significant statement that is made in Romain Rolland's biography of Vivekananda, the French Nobel writer. He says, harmony and synthesis, they constitute the music of Vivekananda's works. Harmony and synthesis. That's one important thing. I mean, a friction-free blending of the best of the traditional with the best of the modern. A friction-free blending. Because normally, harmonization sometimes can cause a lot of friction. And an attempt to bring harmony and peace and stability by the means of revolution had only produced more problems, worse than the problems the revolution tried to address. You can think of all these so-called revolutions were actually, they were a prelude to the emergence of a new dictator. Every dictatorship led to chaos, and chaos produced revolution. A revolution produced a new dictator. You can look at French Revolution. It was one of the bloodiest episodes in modern history, and its end result was something much worse than what it addressed to resolve, the killing, guillotining of tens of thousands of people. Then came Bolshevik Revolution. All these are examples. So, all attempts to change and bring stability in world order through revolutions can only lead to much worse problems, much more complicated problems, Vivekananda says. Then he brings in this magical solution of evolution. So he says, evolution is a healthy means to change, not revolution. Evolution means a gradual cultural transition from a problem to its solution. It is inevitably a change for the better, unlike revolution, which can only create a transition for the worse, as it always happened, where China, France, any country you take. I don't want to go into long details. So Swami Vivekananda says, this evolution is possible only through synthesis and harmony. So every nation state in this world has made some unique contribution to the totality of human civilization. Every nation state. And gives the example of, for example, the music that came to America from Italy and from Germany, and the diplomatic tradition that came from England. And he talks about the modern fashions which came from France. Swami Vivekananda gives a list of these examples of a new cultural element coming to America and harmonizing itself with American culture and enriching it. Gives examples of this kind of what you call evolution. Means a change, a transition, a growth for the better. And this is possible only through only through spirituality and spiritual values. And if you take the entire humanity as a whole, nation state should be able to harmonize the elements of contemplation, the elements of dynamism, the elements of commerce, and the elements of the dignity of labor. These four values represent four levels of ancient India's cultural or social structure. The Brahminism, the ideal of Brahminism stood for the contemplative, the meditative, the philosophical element. Think of the contribution of a man like Aristotle or Socrates to modern Western civilization and culture. Everything began with them only. Think of that. Of course, the early settlers, the colonizers, the seafarers, they played their own important role, no doubt. But some of the eternal values that sustained the social fabric came from ancient Greece. And in a way, this was carried to different corners of Western world by the Roman Empire. So, and then the dynamism of the Kshatriya, Swamiji is talking about, the active element, which you can find today all over Western world, all over the whole entire world. Of course, there is no Western world in that sense today. If we go to some places in India or European or Eastern or Asian countries, they are more Western than many American cities or European cities. They are all looking forward to come to America and worship Warren Buffett and Bill Gates. Well, Americans are turning to India, going to Benares and going to Ramana Maharshi Ashrama, going to study the science you can find. So where do you draw the line? There is no line anywhere. So that means, in a way, what Vivekananda perceived and what he predicted has come true. A stable political order. But again, that's an answer for the political instability. In fact, that is a subject which we cannot really discuss on a platform like this. But we have to talk about democracy, we have to talk about different dictatorial tendencies in different countries, which actually, as a subject, goes beyond the scope of Vedanta. But still, all that I can say is that harmony alone can bring peace and stability in the world. And this ancient Vedic dictum, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, Vasudha Eva Kutumbakam, Vasudha, that's I mean the entire world is a single family, spiritual family. The idea that world is a spiritual family. Stability and order cannot really be created by prosperity alone, because you don't find the most prosperous countries in the world the most stable. It's very difficult to find. If you look at the great thinkers of 19th century, beginning with the American transcendentalists and including Tolstoy, or in 20th century in India, Mahatma Gandhi, and of course in between Swami Vivekananda, and even close to our own times, men like Aldous Huxley, Arnold Toynbee. If you read some of their writings, you find they're all thinking and visualizing about some kind of a mythical. We may not maybe improper to call it mythical, but compared to what happened since, it appears to be mythical, only imaginary. Some kind of a world, imaginary world, where everyone is aware of his duty to not only to his family, but also to Mother Earth, and also to the neighbor living next door to him. The idea that science and technology are not enough, this continuous adventure into nature for more and more power and comfort is not enough. Vivekananda, in a way, he equated science with spirituality when he said that spirituality is an inquiry into the internal nature of man. Science is an inquiry into the external nature. So both are inquiries. But at the same time, if this inquiry into external nature is carried on without keeping in mind that we should also make an inquiry inward, then all these problems emerge. So if you read the writings of transcendentalists, especially like Henry Thoreau, Walden and other books, or Whitman's Leaves of Grass, you find they are visualizing a world in which science and technology is an intrusion not in the privacy of human life, but also into the serenity and purity of Mother Earth. Again, the endless desires, the drives for more power, more comfort, and more luxury, using science and technology for the selfish purpose of human beings, that will bring only misery. Unless science and technology are guided and dictated by a higher power, wisdom, or spirituality, the fruits of science and technology can only lead to our own destruction. So, on the one hand, there is one way. Science and technology can be a pathway to comfort, prosperity, more education, communication, transportation, everything. On the other hand, it can also be indirectly a road leading to our own destruction. We can think of today's own world. Today, for example, I told about this domination of the technology companies in our everyday life. Technology companies can do and undo things, make and unmake things, because they can give you an identity which is not yours. They can create a world in which you live, and the world has nothing to do with your own physical realities. That's a problem. And this is again reinforced by modern discoveries in information technology and also artificial intelligence. So all these can create a world which is more and more unstable. Genghis Khan in today's world can be much more destructive than he was during his time. Hitler would have almost succeeded in doing whatever terrible things he wanted to do if these technology companies were in his hands. You can imagine. Because technology companies, digital technology can make you think the way it wants. Not through artificial intelligence, but by manipulating things and filling our mind with falsehoods. So we will slowly start interpreting right for wrong and wrong as right. Dark as white and white as dark. Night as day and day as night. This kind of artificial world in which we are forced to live is the greatest danger. The domination or the evil power of these digital companies. In this context, Swamiji says, we can still keep our feet firmly rooted on this Mother Earth of our own true identity by bringing spiritual values into every aspect of our life. And that's why he talks about removing the dividing line between the secular and spiritual. And he talks about Karma Yoga. In Karma Yoga lectures also, he indicates he actually predicts some of the problems that can happen in future. I have to remind you again, Vivekananda made many of these important speeches before 1900s. And again, almost 16, 17 years, maybe 15, 16 years before the beginning of the First World War. And he also makes ominous predictions about what was going to happen in Eastern Europe. When he traveled through Eastern Europe, through what is now Czechoslovakia, Serbia, Bosnia, and all these places. Today's Europe has become a military barracks. So anytime things can explode. Of course, later, you know what happened, what led to the beginning of the First World War, the killing of Archduke, and those are different things. But I mean to say, Vivekananda had very much predicted and visualized what was to happen, what will happen if we don't include spiritual values in our everyday life and spiritual values even in our political ideologies, even political thoughts. So he talks about this. Even politics should be made religious. Politics with the separation of state and church and state is a different concept, which is its link going back to French Revolution. But then Vivekananda didn't mean that. What he said was this, that in all spheres of human activity, there should be a place for spirituality. Now, the spirituality, when you hear this word from me, it sounds very abstract. What Vivekananda said was this, looking upon the whole creation as one family. This is spirituality. So if you take care of that forest in your neighborhood, the water, the oceans and mountains and valleys, and also if you behave properly with your neighbor, that is spirituality. Not going to temples and churches. Temples, churches, books, psalms, all these are important, but they are important only as a means. They are important, they are unavoidable. You cannot begin your education without a kindergarten, without a primary school, or maybe a city college. But no sensible person thinks of ending his education in kindergarten. So all these are important. Books, preachers, lectures, churches, temples are very, very important. But eventually, they are important only because they take you beyond them. And what is beyond them? This kind of, and he coins his expression, universal spirituality. So in modern times, you find spiritual humanism. But Vivekananda used the words universal spirituality when he talks about practical Vedanta, which actually means doing our secular duties in a spiritual way. So removing the dividing line between spirituality and secularism. And now that's why in some contexts, some of his definitions of history are very relevant. For example, Swamiji says, history of civilization is a progressive reading of spirit into matter. History of civilization is a progressive reading of spirit into matter. How do you explain this? There's a gradual, invisible progression and evolution taking place in all civilizations. And civilizations move in cycles. They go through different stages in their growth. But eventually, they reach their fulfillment when civilizations realize that they need power and wealth, but that's not enough. They need something more. And what it means is they need a spiritual element, that is a progressive reading of spirit into matter. Power, wealth, the so-called refinements, science and technology, innovations and discoveries, they constitute, even today's world, the digital global order, the digital technology, they all constitute different stages in the evolution of matter and its role in human civilization, in human life. But they reach their fulfillment when he realizes that along with it, it needs something much more just to sustain it. To be able to enjoy the fruits of science and technology, humanity needs a spiritual value concept. That's what Vivekananda's statement. He says, history is a process of idea and action going on in the human world. History is a movement towards perfection. So this again. history is a movement towards perfection. So, perfection not in a straight line, that's an interesting thing to remember. Along with that, Vivekananda also said that all civilizations had gone through, the entire human civilization had gone through different stages of, in his own language, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, again Brahmana, this cyclic order. And he talks about ancient Greece, maybe an example. This may appear to be a bit mythical and utopian to many of the modern ultra-pragmatic historians. But if you go to a historian like Arnold Toynbee, he also talks about the challenge and response and the cyclic rotation of the rises and falls in the moment of human civilization. He talks about this. So, for example, ancient Greece, in Vivekananda's view, is an example of the early Brahminical order. I am talking in the context of Western culture because that's seems to be more relevant right now. And again, the Roman imperial power, dominated by imperial ambitions, represents the Kshatriya ideal in Western civilization. Then the founding of the East India Company in 1600, the royal charter signed by Queen Elizabeth I. Then the Dutch East India Company, French East India Company, all these constitute the beginning of the Vaishya order. And again, today's digital world may represent the last portion, which is dominated by the idea of equality, democracy, egalitarianism, but a possible danger of forgetting the spiritual aspect. That's an idea. We don't want to go back to the times of Aristotle or Socrates. But at the same time, some of the great teachings of those great men who represent the Brahminical ideal in Western context, the contemplative, the higher transcendental thinking, unlike the terrible ideas that came to Europe between Augustine and, of course, Kant, when philosophy practically was at the stranglehold of theology in Europe. Philosophy practically died. So, but there was a glorious era of ancient Greece where an old man like Socrates and Plato and Aristotle could sit somewhere and talk about some higher transcendental values. We still constitute the cream of Western civilizational culture. So what it means is that should be combined with the dynamism which you found during Roman times, and then the enthusiasm for spreading, for traveling, for discovering new continents that you found from, let's say, from 16th century, 17th century onwards, with this modern concept of egalitarianism, where at least in modern times, in this age of digital technology, information technology, modern innovation, you can find any person who has a talent will be the same, is as good as anyone else. The idea that whole humanity is one. I mean, this dignity of labor is very antithesis of the old idea of ancient Greece or ancient India. But this modern revolutionary concept of dignity of labor, egalitarianism, democracy, that anyone can do whatever he wants. If he wants, he can climb the steps of evolution and become a Buddha if he wants. He can also become a Genghis Khan if he wants. The possibility and opportunities are there everywhere. This is a new age, and Vivekananda talks about this age of egalitarianism. But suppose we can think of combining all the positive elements of all these four. Let's say the contemplative element of a Socrates, the enthusiasm of the Roman Empire, and the commercial adventurism of the discovery of new continents, plus the egalitarianism, the equality of modern times. That is what Vivekananda had in mind, which he talks about the harmonization of all the positive elements of human evolution. The contemplative, the active, the commercial, and the egalitarian, which he talks about as the only means for a ideal global paradigm in modern times. And no revolution in science and technology can challenge this, because this global paradigm can absorb, can accommodate, and still make use of all the forces that nature can give us. All the contributions of science and technology can be utilized properly, with wisdom, with an insight for the good of humanity, if we can combine these four elements. The contemplative can also be called the spiritual, the meditative. Second, the active, the dynamic. The third, the explorative, the adventurous, which leads to new innovations in all areas of life. And the fourth, the egalitarianism, which rules out any possibility of monopolization of the forces and the privileges in a few hands. This is what Vivekananda had in mind. It may sound a bit mythical and utopian, but it's always better to have a higher ideal in our mental horizon, so that we will know that we have still not reached perfection. There is still some distance to travel, and there is a possibility for further evolution and growth. This is the advantage of keeping a higher ideal in our mental horizon. So Swamiji talks about this. And he says, expedition of the human soul for salvation is the history of mankind. Expedition of the human soul for salvation. That's so good. That's partly spiritual, partly civilizational. Expedition of the human soul. So every human soul is an expedition for its own salvation. Human society and human civilization also is in a quest for perfection. And this perfection will arrive only when we combine without any friction, through this friction-free combining or blending of the contemplative, the active, third, the explorative, the adventurous, and fourth, the egalitarian. So, if you leave out one, everything will collapse. Suppose we emphasize only the egalitarian values. What happens is, we'll become just comfortable automatons or morons. You can imagine. A powerfully built human being can live for maybe 150 years if he does exercise. Every day eats organic food, very happy, wonderful, fine. But then when he wants something, he presses a button on a computer or something. That's all. He can't think. He cannot think of the best food, the best clothes, and the best forms of modern comforts. So then the contemplative, that's the meditative, the active, and the explorative, those elements will disappear. If you believe only in exploration, in bringing money, the mindset of the 17th century seafarers, then you will accumulate all wealth, will monopolize all power and wealth in your own hands. If you emphasize only the active element, then you become a tyrant or dictator. If you believe only in the contemplative element without other three factors and forces, what happens is very small number of highly educated, highly evolved people will be living in this world. The rest of humanity will be far below. That will create a kind of divide, cultural divide, a spiritual divide, a civilizational divide in society. So Swamiji talks about combining these four forces, stability of the contemplative, the active, the explorative, and again the egalitarian. Is the only way to bring stability in global order. So as I mentioned, today, of course, I'm just reminding what I said at the very beginning. The old bipolar order has failed, which existed during the time of the Cold War. Then the unipolar order is being challenged today. So we are again going towards a multipolar order. Historically, it is not something new. As a concept, it emerged since the Treaty of Westphalia in 1646. So, but it was very bad, very small, very lopsided. It had relevance only in the geographic region of Western Europe, not beyond that. In today's world, you live in your own small, tiny room anywhere in the world. You are connecting yourself with the whole world, the entire humanity. You can connect yourself with. So we are living in what you call in one world, which at the same time which is a multipolar world. So the only way to bring stability is by combining in our human character and also in our constitution of different nations, these four elements which constitute the four levels of evolution for all human beings: the contemplative, the active, the adventurous or explorative, and the egalitarian. That is Swamiji's view in a nutshell. I have made an attempt to give just a bird view of some of these great ideas that Swami Vivekananda gave to this world. In fact, we have to remember frequently, very often, when we look towards the teachings of a great saint who lived more than 150 years from now, we may think things are old-fashioned. But remember, in every period of transition in history, there were a few good, great men and women who looked back to the past and brought back some higher ideas from the past and tried to apply them, draw inspiration from those higher ideas. They were the ones who actually preserved human civilization, not those who never looked back, always look forward, thinking that human life is a one-way journey, is straight line progression. No, human civilization is not in straight line progression, it is in cosmic cycle. It is cyclicism, the doctrine of cyclicism in historiography. Vivekananda was a great exponent of this doctrine of cyclicism. We are going through different cycles, rises and falls. Thank you. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. So we have some very important announcements. This is the last lecture of this season, and we have summer recess beginning tomorrow, Monday, June 26th. Through Saturday, September 9, lectures will resume on Sunday, September 10th, and the Friday evening class will resume on September 15th. But please remember, our 6 o'clock lecture that we give an online class at 6 p.m. every Sunday at 6 p.m. an online class. The subject is the foundational text of Indian philosophy. It will continue throughout the summer, so there will be no suspension of that program. Every Sunday we will have one online lecture, 6 p.m. in the evening. The subject is the foundational text of Indian philosophy. The Zoom and YouTube links are available in our website's homepage, as well as in the monthly email bulletin. So please remember, the Zoom and YouTube links are available. So during this summer recess, from 26th June, tomorrow, up to September 10, Sunday, September 10, there will be no Sunday lectures and no Friday classes. in the old temple. At the same time, the more important Sunday evening online class at 6 p.m. on the foundational text of Indian philosophy will continue throughout the summer. The Zoom and YouTube links are available on our website homepage as well as the monthly bulletin. There will also be some special programs to which you are all invited. On Saturday, July 8 at 10 a.m. at the new temple, we will celebrate Guru Purnima. So Guru Purnima falls on 3rd July, but a public celebration will be normally on a weekend day. So it will be on July 8th at 10 a.m. at the new temple, Guru Purnima celebration. That's a day devoted to honoring the spiritual teacher. The program will include worship, meditation, chanting, readings from the scriptures, short talks, devotional music, flower offerings by devotees, and a prasad luncheon. This is important. And we will have some guest Swamis coming from our neighboring center, Swami Tattwamayananda, the Assistant Minister of Vedanta Society of Hollywood. He will be coming here. So there will be talks on one subject. The subject will be Guru Purnima. It's a general talk on the significance of Guru Purnima. You are all invited to attend the Labor Day retreat from Saturday, September 2nd through Monday, September 4th at the new temple. So please remember, before we resume the Sunday lectures, there is another important event here. After Guru Purnima, which is on July 8, there will be our Labor Day retreat. Labor Day retreat is from Saturday, September 2nd through Monday, September the 4th at the new temple in the Vivekananda Hall. The topic will be Holy Mother Sri Sharada Devi, a spiritual ideal for modern age. More information will be in the September bulletin. So please remember, Labor Day retreat, Saturday, September 2nd, 3rd Sunday and 4th Monday at the new temple in Vivekananda Hall here. During the summer, the temple will be open from 8 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. for those who wish to meditate. The bookshop will be closed in July. However, the bookshop orders can continue to be placed online. So you can buy books very easily using our own website. You can buy books online. In August, the bookshop will be open on Saturdays and Sundays from 1 to 4 p.m. If you would like to make an offering, a collection plate will be available on the cart at the door as you exit. There is also a mounted offering box near the auditorium door in the foyer. As usual, after the lecture, there will be a question and answer session in Vivekananda Hall, and all are welcome. We wish you all a healthy and happy summer, and we look forward to seeing you at our special program. So please remember, July 8, Saturday, Guru Purnima, in this auditorium, 10 a.m. And then we have Labor Day retreat, September 2nd, 3rd and 4th, from 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. It will be held in Vivekananda Hall, here itself. You can get more information from our website. Most welcome.